there, I wanted to take just a minute to summarize what we talked about today regarding big picture learning targets and individual I can statements. The graphic organizer here, I think, can kind of help you understand how all those pieces fit together if you are more of a visual learner. Since we are talking about the backward design approach, we're actually going to start here with the standard and then that big picture learning target. What at the end of the unit do you want your students to be able to know and do? How are they going to prove that they know how to do that? What big picture goal will the students meet? On the top edge of the arrows here is for your daily I can statements. This is day by day. You're going to scaffold the skills and the knowledge that you need to build with students in order for them to reach that final learning target. So each day it will be a different what do I need to know and do that you're building on. Finally, the bottom parts of the arrow here are your corresponding learning experiences. So for whatever today's I can statement is, what learning experience are you going to use to help students meet that? When you're planning with your PLC, I would suggest that spending the bulk of your time talking about your big picture goal and then your daily I can statements is probably the best use of your time. Remember, we don't need everybody to have exactly the same activities in class. Now, it's okay if you do. There's nothing wrong with that. There's good to that. But a lot of times we get bogged down in comparing activities and don't really get to the meat of our planning, which is meeting those student learning goals. Now, when you think about using those things in your classroom, I wanted to kind of give you a guideline of what you might think about in terms of how you would use it. When are you using these learning targets? Like I said, putting it on the wall is not what makes the magic happen. It's what you do with it, how you engage with the students in those learning targets. So at the beginning of class, let students know what they're going to learn and do that day, that I can statement, and then how that relates to your big picture goal. You might use your bell ringer time to prompt this, or you might just do a very quick teacher-led discussion at the beginning of class. It doesn't have to be something totally lengthy or whatever. Really, the whole purpose is to get students thinking about their own learning. Then throughout class, you want to refer back to that I can statement and talk about, okay, well, we've done this much of it so far. What else do we have to do? Again, you're wanting students to think about how they are building towards being able to accomplish that goal. You could do this at the end of an activity, at the end of a discussion. Really, any kind of logical transition point in your lesson would be a good time to stop and just look back quickly at that statement. Could be very quick, turn and talk. It could be a formative assessment thing like a little clickers quiz or a thumbs up, thumb down, you know, any kind of quick way you can get students to compare what they've done so far to that learning target. Then, of course, the end of class naturally is the time during your closure or however you're going to do that to refer back to that I can statement. Again, you just reading it to them even is really not the goal. The purpose is to make sure students can explain what they were supposed to have learned and how that relates to their overall learning target. This could be a perfect opportunity for a to get out the door, maybe a turn and talk. It could be a journal writing activity. It could be a lot of ways that you could do that, and it serves as a very quick and effective formative assessment to help you make sure you're clear on what you're wanting to do the next day. The other thing we talked about was how we're displaying these learning targets for our students. We talked a good bit about that. Wanted to point out, first of all, why should you display these? Why? I don't want to do something just because, right? What is the purpose for putting these targets up for students to see? Why do you want to let them take up wall space? It's because when learners know where they're going and how they're going to get there, they're able to take more ownership of their learning process. You have to admit, I'm sure the same is for you. When you go sit down to a PD, what is the first thing you want to know? What's the agenda? What are we going to do? Because that helps guide your thinking about how you're engaging in what's going on. Well, how should you display these learning targets? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. again, it's not just about having it there so somebody walking by can see. It is most effective if you have these learning targets up somewhere where students can see them all the way through class, and important to make sure they're labeled so that students are clear on the difference between your big picture target and then your I can statement for the day. The most important thing, though, is not having it displayed on the wall. Remember, it's that discussion you engage in students with related to the lesson for the day. Where could you display this? I know we feel a lot of pressure to have it on the board so that whoever comes through the room can see that, and that's great, but I don't feel like you ought to be limited to only you have to have it written on your board. I mean, you can have it written on your whiteboard, but you might have a bulletin board you want to post it, or some kind of poster, or you might want to put it on a slide that you show on your projector as you begin class, and then to help yourself remember to do it, put it up in the middle of class activity, and then again at the end to help kind of trigger your memory to do it. You might put it in the student notebook. Have them either write down or glue down their learning target, and they can flip back and refer to it that way, or somehow put it on student desks. Again, where you put it is not nearly as important as what you're doing with those targets, how you're having students thinking about their own learning. The last thing I just want to remind you, you probably feel like this little person under the pile of papers in October. I know that's how I usually feel. Just focus on doing one thing. And if you can get one thing accomplished, then you can move to the next. That's all you have to do. I really like this little poster. You can do anything, and I believe that, but you can't do everything. That's a good one to think about. So what is going to be your one thing that you give it all to, and then move on to the next thing. Last of all for you is just a quick reminder that we can be legends, just like that song I shared. Our determined school, I have all faith that you guys are already taking the steps to make a big difference for our students' learning. I'm really excited about how that's going to continue through the school year.